At 9 points, nobody wins, nobody loses.
Yeah.
So is a tie like kissing your sister? Now, if you happen to be on the side of the Texans in that ball game, you caught a miracle.
Yes.
And if you were already counting your money, you were standing in line at the window going, 2,000 on the Chiefs. You feel like a fucking asshole. Sportsbook managers look at it and you go, we're giving everybody their money back who had it at 9. But the call was justified. So you take all of the risk out of that play if you're Andy Reid. You had it at 8.5. You're feeling pretty good. Chiefs, are they vulnerable? Maybe. Or are they getting such favorable officiating?
Yes.
Lubie, that it's to the point where there should be some kind of an investigation launched. I don't know. Is this a Taylor Swift conspiracy type of thing? We'll probably hear more about that at the inauguration today when Trump goes in. You know what? I fucking had the Texans on the money line.
Exactly.
See, now that would maybe endear me to the idea that embolden me that maybe the next 4 years wouldn't be so rough. I always liked it when Barack Obama was doing brackets, although he was a cock-eating motherfucker.
He was horrendous at it.
With all the favorites. Okay. Hey, Michelle, does this guy pick anything but favorites?
The time. Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
All right, good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Defo Show. It's funny when you put that little cover shot up there, Professor. Picture of me. It's a black and white of Michael Lubie and me.
Lubie, we don't have one of the two of us.
Yeah, I know, but he looks like he's 11 years older now. I mean, he looks like my 6-year-old grandson. It's amazing how time debilitates your physicality. I don't think that picture was taken all that long ago.
No shit. I mean, this waking up at 7:00 in the morning to set up a show crap. I think by the end of the week, I'm going to look like I've been president for 4 years.
I know it's regrettable, Professor, because you took command of the equipment there. Lubie skipped down, of course, without giving me the necessary instructions it would take for me to log in here on my own. But I'm happy to have you here on the show because I'm
happy to be here. I'm just not happy the rest of the day when I got to take a nap at 1:00 in the afternoon because I'm
welcome to old age, my friend.
Physically adjusted for this.
Every day I come back from my walk of life. Yesterday was around 1:00. It was a gorgeous day outside. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything nicer. I walked by various views of the beach on my way where there were gaps between the new high-rises that are going up. And I'm looking at the ocean. It's like Lake Placid. I mean, it's just absolutely still. I'm thinking these are the kind of days I love sitting out on the beach there, cranking up a little music, annoying all the people in the immediate area. Is that all you listen to is blues and rock? How conscious? No, you're not the type of guy that would. Yeah, you are. You're a very respectful individual. You're not a big beach guy, but when you're blasting music somewhere, maybe out of your backyard, I mean, how conscious are you of the fact that most of the people, that are surrounding you probably can't stand what you're playing?
I think you're 0% conscious.
You what now?
I think everybody's basically 0% conscious of that. Of that factor.
I always get the look, like, hey, could you turn that down? Every now and then somebody will come kick sand in your face and take your speaker and just throw it into the ocean. And it is great now. I mean, it's a lot better than it used to be when I used to peruse Jones Beach there, trying to pick up chicks, which, by the way, I mean, Jones Beach, West End too, for those unfamiliar, those that remember those days, and this had to be circa early 70s, late 60s, was frequenting this beach all the time, every day of the summer, rain or shine. What a sea of babes it was. My God. It was just like a massive Woodstock type of situation. Every square inch of sand was covered with a blanket. And
Isn't there a Ramones song about Jones Beach?
Could be. I don't know. I wasn't a big Ramones guy. If you were playing the Ramones, I'd be running over there and saying, hey, could you fucking turn that down? No, they were. I like all genres of music, but yeah, I mean the picture. Yeah, the picture of Lubie. I mean, he looks like a kid there, and it was one of those days yesterday where I thought about going to the beach. I was thinking, as soon as I get home, I'm going to jump in the water. And as soon as I got home, I laid down, and that was it. I was asleep till 3:00. So
there you go.
That's where it goes. I did feel your pain, though, because I saw the start time, and I would imagine you were involved in this, although I think you're a big backer of the Zags of Gonzaga. And I don't know if you're
I've actually been fading them. I've been looking for spots to fade them this year. They are not up to normal standards. We had a nice hit. Was it Washington State that beat them straight up a couple weeks ago? That was a nice one.
Yeah, and they were favored by I think 15 in a hook last night. They
Really?
matched
Got up
it.
to 15. I saw it at 13.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about yesterday's news tomorrow, but whatever it was, they easily eclipsed the point spread and won that ball game. But when I saw the 11 o'clock post time Eastern time for the tip off, I thought, oh, Professor, going to be a very dicey situation for tomorrow's show. All right.
Personally, I was not on that one. Luckily for me, the last tip of the night for me was 8:30. Was the Marquette game, and it was a very fortunate cover. I was in on it early in the day, so I got it at 6.5, but it got up to like 8.5, and of course landed on 9. So
Wow.
yeah, you pretty much covered no matter when you took it. But if you took it late, you sweated it really right up until the last shot.
And one of our handicappers yesterday on our Barrier Bookie show on NoFilter.net and various other platforms, he was all over VCU yesterday against St. Louis. And I guess the oddity, the first thing that stood out about that game, the only reason I even saw the result was because there was a fight in the stands. It reminded me of your great story about the Black Panthers sitting in at halftime of your Rutgers UMass game when you had the ultimate. I mean, as good a piece of inside information as the Katy Perry story.
I will never get a better piece of info than that one, and it turned out unfortunate. Again, I call it my.
How long ago was that, Prof?
Oh God, that would be like 97, 98 maybe. So going on 30 years.
You get a call from the SID before a game.
Wasn't the SID? It was my best friend from high school who ended up going to the University of North Carolina for journalism school, which at the time, North Carolina and Missouri were pretty much the two best J schools in the country for sports, outside of your own Syracuse, but that was broadcast journalism. This was print. And his first job was for some small newspaper in Boston. It wasn't the Globe or anything. It was, some nonsense paper.
Yeah.
And his gig was UMass basketball, and it was Cal and Marcus Camby, and it was the year, if you remember, they had the two guards, Edgar Padilla and Carmelo Travieso, who weren't terrible, but they weren't anything particularly special. And if you watch the team, they were number one in the country, and Camby was everything. He was the offense. He was the defense. He might as well have served the Gatorade. Camby was the whole team. The year before, they had gone to the Final Four with Camby, and he had taken a bunch of jewelry from an agent and gotten caught. Everybody knew he was going to do a 4-game suspension at some point during the year, but they were protesting it, and Cal was going to do it at some random time where it fit the schedule. So they're playing Rutgers, and they're 28.5-point favorites. And my buddy calls me that morning and said, Cal told the guy who's covered the team last night, and not telling anybody else until game time, Camby's going to start to serve his suspension tonight. Now, Rutgers was lousy, but again, 28 and a hook without Camby, there was no chance they were covering. There was 0% chance they were covering this game. Got money down literally everywhere across the globe. I could get it. And so goes to halftime. Rutgers is up 3 straight up at halftime. But if you're watching this game, they could lock everybody other than UMass out of the building, and they're still not going to cover it.
You're up 31.5 to the spread.
Yes. No chance. UMass might win the game. There's 0% chance they're going to cover.
Right.
And the Rutgers Black Student Union comes, and it was a peaceful sit-in. But they come and they sit on half court and they refuse to leave. And the game was not televised. This was really, I think many dishes were out by then, the direct TV, but it was before ESPN was sending cameras to, every game in the country to cover it. So I'm getting this bits and pieces, from updates, and they show and I'm like, Kent State sent a couple of cops in to shoot a couple of them. They'll clear out. And they're like, well, we don't have a developing situation here. So this goes on for like an hour and a half. Are they going to And eventually the announcement comes, we're canceling the game. We're going to restart it. So technically it was a push. It was no bet. But I still, to this day, call it my worst loss ever.
Oh, it's painful. What are you talking about? It's like, your horse wins by 16 lengths. 13-1, and they declare it no race because of some mishap. Some
Right.
60-1 shot got left in the gate there, and all of a sudden, instead of the usual just refund the money on the horse that got stiffed, they just take the whole result off the board, and it might have been your only winner in the last 6 months. But I thought of you because was there a possibility? I guess this was a situation that was much more easy to control. But in the VCU game last night against St. Louis, which one of our handicappers, your good friend too, Scotty M. You know Scotty M.
Now, which side was he on in this game?
He was on VCU laying some points. I think it might have been 6.
All right, so he
like that.
wanted it to get canceled because he took that one in the teeth.
Yes, I mean it was his only salvation. Would have been a fight breaks out with what? Like, did you catch this?
I
think
did not.
in the stands, a fight breaks out with about a minute 18 to go in the ball game, and I don't know that it ever jeopardized the completion of the game. You would have to think with that little time left. I don't know. Would they have declared it? It would have been no contest. St. Louis was way up at the time and ended up winning the game outright in kind of a runaway. But nonetheless, I was thinking, geez, I mean, this reminds me of the professor's worst beat ever story, which I do believe, even though it ended up in a push. I mean, you were counting the money.
Oh, yeah.
Constitutes anybody could give me their worst beat story, and I don't know that any of them top that.
I agree with you. And, look, we all have. This is the thing. When there's like some fluky ending and people complain, it's like, oh, I've had much worse beats than that. Like, the Buffalo game, the stupid 4th down play that nobody will shut the hell up about.
Yeah.
That, honestly, in the history of bad beats, that doesn't even remotely come close to qualify. Like, you think Josh Allen got a first down on that play with 13 minutes. So you don't know what the hell's going to happen in the next 13 minutes, even if they give him the first down. As bad beats go, that's not even remotely close to it. But anybody who has played regularly for a number of years has taken it in the teeth much worse than that.
No doubt. And, somebody wrote this a while back, and I remember it left an indelible impression with me that you cannot judge a subsequent series of events based on something that happens during the course, say, of a ball game. People always say, oh, well, geez, if they hadn't gone for 2, you just don't know how the rest of the game would have played out.
Exactly.
You don't know that had a team been awarded a turnover on a controversial play, and you don't know that they wouldn't have just turned the ball back over themselves. I mean, there's so many variables that come in. You can't say for sure. Oh, well, geez, I mean, once in a while you see something and it's so blatant. Kind of like, what was that, when the Rams went to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, the pass interference call against the Saints in the NFC Championship. Or the pass interference that didn't happen in the NFC Championship against the Saints. That one, but as I recall, that was like 6 minutes left or something, right? Like, that was relatively late in the game. So, yes, once in a while you will see a bad call that clearly turns a game. Yeah, but it's very rare.
And you'll see a play that happens or doesn't happen, and you're thinking, okay, that was it. But I mean, as you were correctly stated, at the point where this, I mean, what was it obvious that he made it or didn't make it? I don't think so.
Look, okay, we're not talking a ton about the Super Bowl, but we can sort of.
Oh no, we have to get into
an ancillary. Yeah. I don't get the level of hatred that the Chiefs are currently getting. Now, look, I was one of the lead Patriots haters, but that was after, like, they got caught cheating. There were reasons to it. This is just insane. And
it had nothing to do with your feelings about the city of Boston in general.
Being led by Dave Portnoy, who, look, I get it. You bet $1 million on the Bills in a future to win. It was a bad loss. But, like, people are clipping together different angles of this play. And I've probably watched 100 of them on Twitter over the last couple of days. No matter how you clip it, no matter how it wasn't an obvious call. Like, the way, the angle, because he was trying to sort of go sideways or backwards, there's no clear, this shows the ball over the line angle that proves he got the first down there. You may think so, but you can't show me a clip of definitive proof. And that tells me sorry, that them's the breaks. Like, it's like a ball strike call where it's that much either on or off the plate. Like, it's super close either way.
Yes.
And people have gone insane with this. And again, it's one. It was a big call. It was 4th down play, but it's one call in the course of a football game.
And as we said, you don't know. They might have fumbled the ball on the next play and it gets taken back for a score and they get buried.
I mean, above and beyond this, if you're trying to prove some grand conspiracy theory that the NFL is in coordination with every referee and the Kansas City Chiefs, and that I guess all other 31 owners would have to sign off on this huge conspiracy, if your evidence is this one 4th down play, I'm sorry, that ain't much of a case. I mean, again, Zapruder film time. It's like blurry. It's like I can't tell.
Even Zapruder,
yeah,
wouldn't have determined whether they, he made it over the grassy knoll or not. Because I think it was relatively impossible to decipher. You just had to go with the call on the field. My first instinct was he only had to move the ball like a half a centimeter. So
yeah,
looked to me like he went forward a little bit. They stood him up pretty quickly. The ball's kind of wiggling around there, and
again, unfortunately, I can't play it because I don't know how to play stuff off the internet on this show.
Yeah,
while running it at the same time. But there's a guy on Twitter who has like clipped together every angle and inserted a line and this, that, and the other thing. And again, even with that, even with clearly hours of work put in it, you don't have an angle that definitively proves the ball was over the line.
There was no way to tell from any of the video replays who was correct on that call. The guy on the left or the guy on the right who made the call. And look, I mean, replay came in.
But that's another thing people are bitching about it. The guy on the top of the screen comes in and it looks like he's over the line. The guy from the bottom. Okay, but if you watch the play, it's the guy on the bottom of the line's call. It's on his side of the field.
And he would have had the better view, the guy that was to the left of the line of scrimmage. Because the way the pile sort of came together, I think the guy that was on the sideline at the top of the screen, probably his vision would have been far more diminished than that. And you still couldn't tell. I mean, I'm with you 100%.
If this is your case, this is the magic bullet of your Chiefs conspiracy theory, then I'm sorry. There's not much of a case. And look, dozens of guys all over media have demonstrated the stats, which don't argue for a Kansas City Chiefs conspiracy theory. In fact, what we learned is, in terms of roughing the passer and unnecessary roughness goes, Josh Allen gets them much more frequently than Patrick Mahomes does. And look, I get why people are upset, because Patrick Mahomes, as evidenced very clearly in that Houston Texans game, of the one where he's going out of bounds and he stops right by the sidelines, he's got that Dutch soccer player, I'm trying to bait the call, and I'm not being particularly subtle about it, stuff about him. I get it. Like, Patrick Mahomes clearly does do that, and I get why people hate it. But again, just the numbers are what the numbers are, and the numbers say there's just not a lot to back this. The NFL is, rigging so Swifties will tune in for the Super Bowl, which, honestly, is that even happening? I will tell you, I was in a mixed crowd Sunday to watch the games. There were the women slightly outnumbered the men, and these were like 30 to 40-year-old white women. Okay, this is Taylor Swift, and all they were doing was saying, yeah, I'm getting kind of tired of Taylor Swift, which I honestly thought, if you are in that age demographic and a white woman, got you kicked out of the club or something. I thought there was like a law that you had to love Taylor Swift if you were in this demographic group. And I heard a lot of anti-Taylor Swift rhetoric during the course of the game, because they're probably tired of it too. It's been like 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
This story's not entertaining anymore.
I don't think it's as big as, there are fewer shots of Taylor Swift in the booth there celebrating.
I'm not going to lie. It seemed like there were a lot of them on Sunday.
Yeah, the Travis Kelce 1-yard catches, I understand. I don't mind it at all. I kind of like it. I always was a fan of celebrities being involved in sports, unless they become obnoxiously so. But
see, the argument would be that well, look, and let's be honest.
Who minded Diane Cannon on the sidelines in a Laker jersey?
Let's be honest. a lot of what has gone on with that particular story is not the NFL's fault. The NFL did not tell you to make the Travis and Jason Kelsey podcast the number 3 podcast in America, which, when you think about it, that is freaking mind blowing. Because one of them's a fucking offensive lineman. And, in terms of like sex appeal for the women and whatnot, like Jason Kelsey's not ranking high. He looks like every offensive lineman, every giant beard, big fat guy who likes to chug beer.
Right.
I mean, Travis Kelsey's a good looking dude, but he wasn't before Taylor Swift. Like, you heard tons of women talking about Travis freaking Kelsey all the time. They went to the number 3 podcast in America, and I'm not sure Taylor Swift was ever on the podcast.
Possibly not. I have no resentment about that.
And I am the one who led it. I am tired of seeing Travis Kelsey's mom on television and doing chunky commercials and all this other stuff, because she never roots for Jason. She's always rooting for Travis, or she's wearing the split jersey. Like, come on. Like, your one son's already got like 2 Super Bowls. Your other son's a freaking offensive lineman. And you're not, come on, you got to cheer for your older son who's the offensive line. And look, Jason Kelsey is a Hall of Fame center. I mean, he was a great center, but he became more famous than every offensive lineman combined in history. Like, he's easily the most famous offensive lineman ever. And I don't know that he rates that high. I'm not sure, it's like Orlando Pace or Jonathan Ogden versus Jason Kelsey. I'm not sure he makes that case.
He might not even be Jeff Saturday.
And then, just based off the popularity of the podcast with the 2 famous people, Jason Kelsey's wife, who's just a housewife, now has like the number 6 podcast in America. And again, I think she's pretty entertaining, but I mean, like, it's not like she's a WNBA star or an Olympic gold medalist. She's just Jason Kelsey's wife.
Right. She's
the wife of an offensive line. I'm sorry, America, if you're sick of this, you have done this to yourself.
Well, it's
like, nobody told you.
Board, is it not? I mean, look what's going on. The mailman knocked on my door the other day, I was saying, and I jumped under the bed. And then I realized, okay, they're not after me. Even my dogs were afraid. It was kind of like, I don't know if you remember this movie, 3 Days of the Condor, but I keep thinking about that every time I see these ice raids that are taking place.
Meanwhile, by the way, I just got a text from a woman in the age range who was like, yo, leave Taylor Swift alone. I'm not picking on Taylor Swift.
No, you've been very gentle about that.
Look, I don't like her music. I was never a Taylor Swift fan, but I'm not a Taylor Swift hater either. I'm just saying, if you and it seems like there's a lot of people out there who really believe that Roger Goodell is fixing games to get Taylor Swift to the Super Bowl once again. If that's the case, the NFL didn't do it. America, you did this to yourself. Again, you have made these people much more famous and a much bigger story than it ever had. Celebrities go to games. Like, you've never started listening to, podcasts because such and such player is dating. Dwayne Wade down here, married to Gabby Union, who, again, was not the biggest movie star in the world, but was a legitimate movie star. Nobody wants to watch those two. They're awful together.
That quiz show is a disaster.
Exactly. Nobody watched that stupid game show.
What was the concept there? I mean, who came up with that?
Honestly, I watched it like 4 times.
Yeah, if you wanted to bury a guy's career right out of the chute.
It was supposed to be like, a Squid Games things where they played kid games, but the kid games were so ridiculously complicated and shot lasers everywhere and shit. Yeah,
it was weak.
It was awesome. Like I said, TNT ran commercials for that for like 6 months before it, and then instantly sent it to rain delay in Braves games. It was on one.
A couple episodes in, and that was it.
Yeah, it was on once, and then instantly it went to the rain delay theater.
I like one of the portrayals, and this came from a friend of ours, renowned criminal attorney, defense attorney, Gary Ostro, who also is a flaming Trumpster, but nonetheless a good guy. And he had a thing where he posted up on social media where you have Andy Reid talking to the officials before the game. And the caption, of course, was Andy Reid giving the officials a pep talk prior to the game against the Buffalo Bills. So, I mean, people can have fun with it. I would say that there, have been incidents where that late flag comes in. In the past with Mahomes, he's knocked out of bounds, and it's somewhat suspect whether or not the circumstances would probably dictate that you let that one go. Hey, let the boys play, and may have been a foul or not. There's no flag originally, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, here comes a Terry Porter flag. Pass interference.
I mean, yes and no, because we're pretending to fuel this conspiracy theory that every quarterback in the league doesn't get these same calls. And they all do. I mean,
certainly Brady did throughout his career.
You don't have to like the fact that quarterbacks are now treated by China dolls. I don't happen to like it myself, but let's not pretend it's not the case everywhere. I mean, the Kenny freaking Pickett, when he played for Philadelphia, is getting these same calls. They're not unique to Patrick Mahomes. You can't touch quarter. I mean, look.
Well, and he's in the spotlight
rule where like offensive linemen can push a defensive lineman down, and if he makes quarterbacks contact with the quarterback's ankles, somehow that's still unnecessary roughness. When it became like the strike zone above the knee and below the shoulders, like, yeah, that was it. They started calling that for everybody, and you're supposed to be able to tackle them, but not fall on top of them while you're both falling down at the same time. You're supposed to be able to shift your weight midair so you don't come down on top of the quarterback. Like when we got to that point, like, bitch about the rules. Don't bitch about the way it's enforced, particularly when Patrick Mahomes is involved.
Well, and you could make a case, people, it's true. You could call holding on virtually every play that you see, and sometimes both ways. And it's somewhat arbitrarily administered. You would like to see only the more, the plays that actually impact what happened on the field be called. But I mean, one of the ones that you see all the time now is a holding call on the direct opposite side of the field, away from the play, on some wide receiver. Where there was no intention to go in that guy's direction, and the guy throws the flag. Maybe that's all he's looking at, and a play that would have been especially impactful in the game gets wiped out one way or the other. But
you see that both ways. You also see, a defensive holding call on the guy who was the fifth read, who's sitting out in the flat.
Right, he's out of bounds.
Absolutely nothing to do with the play, but it's defensive holding 5 yards, and it's third 22. But it's defensive holding 5 yards and an automatic first down.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily. In the past, I've looked and thought maybe, it was. I thought this season there were several times where it looked like it was favorable. But you're probably right, and that's not enough to get Kansas City into the Super Bowl. That in and of itself, they still have to be in positions where they can take advantage of even the most favorable of calls in their direction, and they always are. So take nothing away from them. It's weird too, because usually people like the idea of a successful dynastic team, unless it's the Cowboys. Although when they were winning under Jimmy Johnson, and eventually went on and won a subsequent Super Bowl, I mean, people. There are always going to be people that jump on the winner, and I don't know that people are sick. I think it'll be a phenomenal accomplishment if Kansas City wins this one.
Well, again, nobody hates the New England Patriots. I still hate the New England Patriots.
Yes,
I still pass out sexual predator in the neighborhood flyers anytime Robert Kraft is in Miami. I don't just hate Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. I hate the whole organization.
You're not a big fan of Bobby Kraft. Were you in that cop car when they were staking out the Asian spa there in Jupiter?
I came to visit you at the Super Bowl last time I was down here, when it was Kansas City and the 49ers, and I literally brought a stack of flyers of Robert Kraft's sexual predator, and the NFL confiscated them from me at the front door.
Perhaps in poor taste as far as the NFL goes to distribute those on Radio Row.
Again, but not inaccurate. But I didn't start hating the Patriots till they started getting caught cheating every 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
I didn't start hating the Patriots first Spygate, then Deflategate, then Spygate 2, where they were like, well, it's been 6 or 7 years. Let's just go and do the exact same thing and see what happens. And at that time, I think they only took like a 6th round pick away from them. And it was literally, let's do the original plan where we claim we're making a video series, so that way we can film signals and that'll be our camouflage.
Yeah.
but I didn't start hating them until they started getting caught cheating. I was like everybody else when they played the Rams that first time. Everybody was rooting for them. 9/11 had just happened, and they're the Patriots, and they're playing the Rams who've already won one. Everybody was cheering for them. Again, I don't know what the sin other than winning the Kansas City Chiefs have committed here. And I kind of thought, at least up until this season, doesn't everybody love Andy Reid? Like the big fat guy who's just totally dedicated his entire life to football, and who, oh, by the way, is an amazing coach. I mean, look, as great as Patrick Mahomes is, the guy's one of the greatest play callers. People forget, like, in retrospect, those Philadelphia teams were not that great. They were not exactly overloaded with offensive talent. Yes, they got T.O. at the end of the run there, but they only got him for like 1 year. He managed to keep it together. Before, it was like Freddie Mitchell was their star wide receiver. And he got him to a Super Bowl and a bunch of, what was like 3 or 4 NFC title games in a row. Like, the guy's a great coach. Other than his wife and brother, who, again, those watching the show know, they suck. Like, what's objectionable about Patrick Mahomes? The guy he's that Michael Jordan model. Like, I want to, just compliment my opponents and what a great game and blah, 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 blah. I mean, he's kind of boring if we're being honest about it.
Has been remarkable. There's no question. I remember.
I don't get what's so objectionable, other than the Taylor Swift thing. And if you're hating on the Taylor Swift celebrity box thing, I get it. That one I do get. I'm not that into that aspect of it. But other than that, what's so objectionable about the Kansas City Chiefs?
Nothing.
I don't get it.
Yeah, and here they sit with a chance to do what's been
make history.
unprecedented, a three-peat in the National Football League in an era where it's even more difficult. I mean, it's not like they're bringing the same team that they had 2 years ago. I mean, they've had significant changes. They overcame having to deal with Tyreek Hill. Kareem Hunt was one of their big players. He's back with them now, but nonetheless, maybe not as the same guy that he was originally. And they've made several changes, and they still find themselves in the winner's circle. So,
and the other one I'm hearing is people complaining that it's the rematch thing, that they played the 49ers twice in the Super Bowl, and now they're going to play the Eagles twice in the Super Bowl. Okay, but they were all really good games.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's honestly the thing that everybody's bitching and whining about, that's driving me a little nuts with this Buffalo game on Sunday, and everybody wants to invent these they want to be like Costner and JFK and be like, look at Josh Allen lean back into the left, back into the left, back into the left. You missed a great game while you were busy, breaking down camera angles on the replay of one day. It was a fantastic game. And both the Super Bowls against the Niners were great games. The first game against Philly was a great game. This, looking at the matchup, is probably going to be a great game. Complain about the repetitiveness or whatever it is that you want to complain about, but, don't miss the forest for the trees, because, again, 2 years ago was a fantastic Super. If we get that same game again, it's going to be a great game.
And Baltimore and Buffalo, both very good teams. Now, they played each other, so the Chiefs only had to face one of them, but they earned that position by being the best team in the regular season record-wise. So I don't know what you can take away from. I'm with you. I couldn't be any more looking forward to seeing what happens. I think you always have a lot of drama instilled in these Chiefs games because of the fact that they're very close. You've seen any number of, in a series of miracles, Patrick Mahomes pulling the game right out of his ass. And if he can continue to do that, win a third straight championship, definitely, even though Brady's got 7, you have to start considering that this guy is right up there in the conversation with, and impossible to determine, but greatest of all time. I think he's definitely making a run at that while he's at it, and he may never win another Super Bowl. And that's entirely possible too, the way that things change in the NFL. We have a lot more to discuss here on the program. You were very successful yesterday, Professor, and I appreciate your technical expertise here in rolling in our very important commercial messages here on the show. If you want to attempt that again, that would be great, and then we'll come back and. We were going to have a little more time on Super Bowl talk, but we ended up talking about it for a half hour here in general, not analyzing any specifics necessarily about the game, which we'll get into, of course, next week on the program. But there are some other outstanding peripheral things about Super Bowls, including, and you mentioned that you were at a Super Bowl party, so I wanted to explore that a little bit, and also Super Bowl destinations. When we come back in a moment here on the Defo Show, now that
The time.
that's great, you can do that. It's 8:35. Play the ponies in style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar, and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
Are you looking to buy your first home? Have you been turned down for a loan? Do you need to refinance or get money out of your home? Call Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. He's been helping the South Florida community get mortgages for 30 years.
Hi, this is Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. We have the most competitive fixed rates in the market. Call me 24/7, 561-441-2730. And remember, I don't just work banking hours. To make the right choice for your home, call Choice Mortgage.
Hello, friends. Just like to remind you,
Yeah.
Augusta and the Masters is only 3 months away.
Have they started the promos yet?
It's Jim Nance here
Yeah.
to remind you that there'll be plenty of white South African players because we're letting white South Africans take over our society.
Martin Keimer, comeback.
Retief Goosen, a celebration of white South Africans. And only one black member
He's here in the L's. Yeah.
club. Which, as far as we're concerned, is one too many here at Augusta.
I always love that. We always tease Iron Eagle when he comes on our shows that we'll ask him, we'll pop that music up and just say, hey, Iron, could you give it one shot? Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
Because it's only a matter of time before he's doing it instead of Jim Nance. Certainly due to be bumped off as the number one team. Are you a fan of Nance and Tony Romo? Or
Absolutely not.
No. Okay. Well, what is it that you
I'm
don't?
not a fan of really any particular. Honestly, I was the rare guy when everybody was excited about Tom Brady. Again,
Yes.
not just because I despised Tom Brady. I thought Greg Olson was good. In the number one chair for Fox for that year there. In terms of play-by-play guys, I strangely, I never thought this would happen, but at some point during COVID, Joe Buck kind of endeared himself to me, which is I never in a million years would have thought because I used to despise.
One of those guys that the average degenerate
Buck.
would look at and go, the antithesis of everything I want in a human being. But apparently not a bad guy. Greg Olson, humanitarian plus, a really good guy. I knew him a little bit when he was at the University of Miami, and I'd seen him at a couple of events once he went into the pros. If he would just tone it down a little bit, I'm not a big fan of the color analyst who thinks that every play is of monumental importance and is necessary to go ahead and make some kind of comment on. The 1 yard plunge, and everybody draws to the cliche. Oh, well, you see that thing.
He is to color what Gus Johnson is to play-by-play. And
Yes.
Occasionally it's
A little
bit
overdone. A little overdone. If he would tone it down a little bit, I think his insights are good. I like the way. Look, there's not always something to say, and you don't want to be saying the same thing over and over again.
Well, again, I think we got the perfect example over the weekend with Tony Romo, who somehow during this season has convinced himself that the Josh Allen tush push is the greatest play. You can't stop it. Look at it. It's an unstoppable play, Jim. And then the Chiefs stopped it like 5 times to the point where, one time he had to pitch, he got tied. Another time he had to pitch, and Cook had to make one of the more remarkable plays you'll ever see to get into the end zone. And then, the 4th down play, they stopped it again. So I guess it wasn't quite so unstoppable, was it, Tony Romo?
I liked Romo his first year. I thought he was great.
Everybody did.
He was a second coming, a close, somewhat reasonable facsimile of my all-time favorite color analyst in any sport, the great late Al DeRogatis, who would come up with amazing predictions and insight into what play was going to be run next, and he was way ahead of the game. He didn't overdo it. I mean, he was working with the dulcet tones of the great Kurt Gowdy as well, and I thought they made a great pair. Gowdy gave DeRogatis plenty of room, and DeRogatis delivered with cogent commentary virtually every time that he opened up his microphone. A lot of schlubbering now. I'm not a big fan of guys that just can't lay out for a second and let the game. I mean,
that's Tony Romo. He can't shut up.
Right, as Phil Mushnick always points out. I mean, it's okay. We're watching this. Well, we can kind of see what's happening.
Look, there's room between like Dan Fouts, who basically didn't want to talk when he was doing all those big college football games for years.
Yeah.
They even made a joke about it in The Waterboy where he just said the same 2 lines over and over again. And guys like Romo who will just not keep quiet. I remember during Tony Romo's first year, and I wish I could remember who wrote the article, but someone, it might have even been Gruden, actually, because I don't know if Gruden was still in the announcing game at that point. And the point was, yes, Tony Romo looks like a psychic because he retired relatively young and relatively unexpectedly. And he was like, look, Tony Romo knows all these offensive coordinators. He's worked with half of them. He has broken down film on all these teams. So, yes, he's got a pretty good idea because of formation and tendency and knowing the coaches. He pretty much knows what plays are going to get run. But as his broadcasting career goes along, I think it was Gruden, because Gruden was saying the same thing happened to him when he went into announcing. As your broadcasting career moves along and new coaches and new players, new formations come in, you're not going to be psychic anymore because you literally don't know all the tendencies, and you haven't sat and watched film for hours and hours and hours. And that's sort of what's playing out with Tony Romo, where he's gone from this mind reader like ability to tell you what is coming to now he has to react to it like everybody else because he doesn't know what's coming.
And a lot of the color analysts, the criticism would be they're telling you what you could plainly see with your own eyeballs.
Yes.
And adding no particular insight into what transpired, what's about to take place. I thought we would see more of that from Brady. I actually thought Brady, if he was really going to excel at this, would be more along the lines of, for the majority of his broadcasting career, although he's catching an awful lot of heat lately for being unprepared and seemingly detached from what was actually transpiring, John McEnroe.
Well, you know why that is, though.
Because he's banging Monica Seles? No, I don't know.
And look, I'm not one to give a fair shake to Tom Brady, but it's because
he's got to contain himself. Yeah,
he's a very minor part, but part owner of the Raiders,
right?
And the NFL is enforcing the rule. He's not allowed to sit on the meetings with the other coaches, and he's not allowed to go to the facilities because he might see something that he can pass along to the Raiders to give the Raiders a competitive advantage. So all that prep work that the other guys do, Tom Brady is not allowed to participate in. So and at the time I was like, well, who cares? He knows football. He's going to be fine. But you could see it playing out that he's not necessarily as informed and, has the things at hand that the other color guys do, because by rule, he's not allowed to take all those meetings the other color guys take.
Well, I could say this from being involved in meetings, especially with boxing. Once in a while, you would gain like a morsel of insight into what was going to happen from meeting with these guys, or maybe you could sense a mood or something. But I just thought with Brady, much like you said about Tony Romo, Professor, that, I mean, he knows how the tendencies are, and he's more recently in the league than Romo. He knows the personality traits. He knows the strategic traits and characteristics of a lot of these coaches, the assistant coaches who are constantly circulating around the league and, getting new jobs at different places. And like McEnroe used to do, you almost felt like you were inside the head of one of the competitors, that you were, he was sort of bringing you the guy's mindset. And I thought Brady would be able to do a little bit more of that while he was doing the color analysis. I don't think he's terrible. If he wasn't Tom Brady and he was just Joe Schmo, what would you say? Oh my God, I can't listen to this schmuck. I don't think so. But not delivering the kind of depth and insight and foresight that I would have thought, and painting a picture of what it is like to actually be down there on the field and in certain situations. But I don't know. I mean, if there were no announcers, would it make any difference? Look what happens with ESPN. They have, as you said, a guy that you like, Joe Buck, and many people think that Troy Aikman is very good. I don't know that he's ever said anything of overwhelming significance, but a good-looking guy, and he doesn't do any damage during a game. It's not like you sit there and go, "Oh, what a fucking asshole." But half the people, I don't know what are the percentages on this, and your natural instinct is to tune into the channel that the game is listed on, or that you're anticipating it being on, and then people would rather hear three guys just cutting up some shit on the Manning cast.
Okay, but isn't part of that because we got into these weird salary wars a few years ago, where these guys are now making more than like 75% of the league makes to call games? I mean, like, again, like with the exception of like 4 quarterbacks, Tom Brady is making more money to call a game than anybody in the NFL. Well, like I said, except for like 4 QBs.
Right.
I think because that was a very public thing, we're reacting to the way we always like. If you go see, you could love Tom Hanks, but if Tom Hanks gets $50 million to do the movie and the movie isn't great, you're like, oh, they paid him $50 million for that. I kind of think that's where we're at with these announcers, is they're now making so much money and their salaries have become such a story that it's elevated our expectations about what they can bring. Look, there's always been garbage announcers. There've been, there are plenty of guys doing like the 5th game on CBS who are also terrible, but you never hear anybody other than Dolphins fan bitch about Adam Archuleta, even though, and the only reason Dolphins fans bitch about him is because the guy clearly hates the Miami Dolphins. But other than that, you don't hear people complaining about the job Adam Archuleta is doing on that, but you hear, oh, well, Joe Buck sucks and Troy Aikman sucks and this guy sucks and Al Michaels is, half asleep or drunk during games. Everybody hates Chris Collinsworth. The guys who are making the huge dollars get a lot more hate. And guess what? Anything you do in life, that comes with the big salary, is high expectations and big complaints and big hatred when you don't meet those expectations.
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, it's of. I don't think it's of nearly as much significance as people make it out to be. But
it's not.
I would say Romo may, have hit his prime in his first year.
Agreed.
And that Brady compromised by the parameters that he has to operate under, perhaps a little bit, but still wasn't bringing to the table what I thought he might in terms of insight from a guy who's won 7 Super Bowls, played in the league for 20 years, played for Belichick, then goes elsewhere and wins a championship. And he just doesn't give me that feeling that he's really bringing me into the game in any fashion other than any other guy might do when he was doing it now.
Again, okay. And I will tell you, every year I watch the Rose Bowl, and every year when they do that clip before the Rose Bowl where they play 2 minutes of old highlights, by far the number one thought I come away with is, God damn, do I miss Keith Jackson?
He was great. Great.
For college football, there will never be another Keith Jackson.
I'll tell you what he was really good on that nobody ever mentions. He was an outstanding boxing play-by-play guy, and I want to say that he worked alone on the boxing telecast. That he didn't have like a Gil Clancy sitting there going, yeah, well, you know what? He's going to have to establish the jab here. You're like, Gil, they just rang the bell for the first round. What the fuck are you talking about?
I mean, and there you go. That's sort of your expectation because you have done so much boxing, and I am sure you have worked some fights where your color man was an ex-boxer who clearly has brain damage.
Yes.
And how many times? It's almost a joke at this point. Like, wait, we're gonna throw it over to whoever, to Marvis Frazier. Marvis, tell us about
Marvis was okay, but Joe was a little incoherent.
Whoever it is, I don't keep track of. But how many times have we seen this where they bring in these ex-fighters who can't speak English anymore and are eating banana mush on the side because they just need the sugar to keep their brains going? It's like the ultimate in low expectations, right?
Even a guy who was fairly, he wasn't the most articulate human being. You couldn't see him doing Shakespeare in the Park, but Probably the worst and a very popular guy as a color analyst ever was George Foreman, who was dead wrong about everything.
Okay.
Dead wrong.
Yeah, I can believe it. Again, I don't watch enough boxing. I seem to remember there was some fight that Sugar Ray Leonard did after his
Sugar Ray
second
didn't have much to
retirement,
say.
not the first retirement,
Yeah.
where it seemed like, oh God, he's clearly got CTE. Like
Yeah,
someone,
he was a little punch drunk, but he never really. He was one of those guys, kind of like Brady was in his career, which was the other thing that you're wondering what kind of transition can he make because those Brady press conferences was
who
there
was the guy who
more vapid than that?
Who was the guy who beat the holy hell out of Ray Leonard at the end of it? Was it Terry Norris? There was some fight where he just took a brutal beating.
Could have been Terry Norris.
And then
I
like
think
the
that might have been
next
his last fight.
like the next time out, like it was Sugar Ray calling a Terry Norris. I don't know for a fact it was Terry Norris, but whoever it was, it's like Sugar Ray calling a Terry Norris fight. And I was like, oh, this. Or another great one that I always use is those first couple of years where Steve Young was doing studio for ESPN after he had retired for concussions.
Yes.
And it was like, oh boy, like I know why he's retired. This is, but you got like 3 or 4 years later, and he was, getting treatment or recovering or whatever it was, and all of a sudden it wasn't this is depressing that this quarterback has had his brains leak out of his ear.
Well, and then it was later revealed that he didn't watch any NFL football, even though he was one of their lead pregame and in-game halftime analysts.
Another one, Emmitt Smith, that year on ESPN, and we were like, oh boy, this is getting. And then we found out it was just Emmitt can't read.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't know how many expectations. When I go to watch a football game, I'm not or a basketball game or really anything else. I'm not depending on the announcers for my enjoyment of the game.
Andy, our good friend Andy, who is a frequent commentator on the chat line, he said something that is absolutely the truth. That most guys, especially that watch sports, knew everything that you needed to know about the game, and their knowledge was pretty much etched in stone by the time you were 5 or 6 years old.
Pretty much, yeah.
Nothing new that somebody's going to tell you about football. The only thing that I've seen in my almost 70 years of being a sports fan, I was unaware that the officials could actually award a score, as was the situation in that Eagles-Washington game, that if there were enough penalties called for the same infraction down by the goal line, which the Commanders kept flying off sides, and that the ref actually announced, okay, they do this one more fucking time, we're giving them a touchdown. Which, is also a little... did you know that was a rule? I had no idea.
Because there's a famous college football play on like a fumble recovery where the guy's running by himself for 50 yards and the coach comes off the sideline and actually tackles the player. And they awarded a score for that one.
Was that Woody Hayes?
No, I think it was. I want to say it was.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
I
game.
And it might have even been like a Cotton Bowl in like the 50s or something like that. But I've seen the clips of it, and that I knew the refs could award a score because of that.
All right, people are going to be planning, and I don't know. There's the Foundry, your restaurant, of course. The professor has a piece of a very popular restaurant in Pompano Beach, right there on just off A1A, just over the bridge, and Atlantic Boulevard, where at the Foundry. Do you guys do any Super Bowl catering, or are there special plans there?
We're not really a catering joint. I mean, if someone wants to come in and there's something you particularly like on our menu, we'll work it out, but we're not really a catering thing. And to be honest, people don't really associate us with sports. So while we will have a Super Bowl party, we don't do a lot of menu changes or anything like that for the Super Bowl. Historically speaking, Super Bowl is not really a huge event for us. We do wings. We don't do like a special menu or anything like that.
No,
for the Super Bowl. Never really have. No.
Now
you have to, do it at home.
So we've speculated for years that there are 5 B's that are the essentials for a good Super Bowl party.
Okay,
that would be booze, babes, barbecue, a big screen TV, and some ability. And now everybody can do it, but back in the day, it was a bookie.
Okay,
you have to be able to make wagers. I'm thinking about the different Super Bowl sites I've been to, and I've been to many. I never understood the fascination with having a Super Bowl in Arizona, except that from a temperature standpoint, it's not a bad place to be at that time of the
I
year.
feel
But
like that was the entirety of it.
yeah, but not a particularly exciting city. Now, what is? I don't know. Have
I
you
mean,
been?
they're all hurricanes
Bowls
related.
outside?
They're all hurricanes related. They're not Dolphins related, but I just associate bad things because the Hurricanes have a bad history at the Fiesta Bowl. So
Yes,
I am not a fan of Phoenix as a football location.
it's kind of a boring city. I've been there many, many times.
I mean, the best thing about it is it's like a 30-minute flight to Vegas, right? I mean, let's be honest.
That would be the one plus, and theoretically, it's not a bad drive from Phoenix to Las Vegas. But and I made that drive after being at a Super Bowl in Phoenix, Arizona, and I took a wrong turn somewhere, and the next thing you know, you're in the mountains of Utah or something.
You're Bugs Bunny. I should have made that left at Albuquerque. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't say that if you miss this exit here, you're going to be driving for the next 3 hours trying to circumvent your way or circulate your way
Well,
back.
now, I mean, the problem with Phoenix is there's probably got to be like 10,000 ICE agents just crawling around the city
Imagine. Yeah.
asking for your papers. Like,
Who would even want to land in the airport there, or even come through the city limits in a vehicle? Every one of them that we pulling
that's like the
people
number
out.
one city for border crossings, right? That's where
Among them,
people
yes.
end up first.
New York probably was the second worst. I don't know the Phoenix.
Really, you're going to say either of those were worse than Jacksonville? I have
Jacksonville, yeah.
talked
I
to
didn't go
people
to
who,
that city.
and again, we're in Florida. Jacksonville,
Yeah.
you can drive. You could, leave in the morning and catch a Super Bowl. I have heard Jacksonville was just the unmitigated disaster of all time, mostly because of hotel rooms.
They didn't have the rooms.
You had people like staying in Gainesville, which is like a 2.5-hour drive away.
And on cruise ships.
Yeah, because that's the one I've heard most cited was that Jacksonville was the biggest disaster.
That made no sense. And that was not driven by the incentive of the team building a new facility either, which makes it a very odd choice to have hosted a Super Bowl.
And I would say the one that was most curious to me because it got generally bad reviews, but you and Lubie loved it for the Super Bowl and for the Final Four was Houston. Because what I heard
Houston's good.
is the problem with Houston is that it's so spread out that everything's like a 90-minute drive to go from one event to the next event to the next event. So I heard a lot of complaints about Houston, but I know you and Lubie went Final Four there and a Super Bowl there and loved it both times.
I did enjoy the experience there in Houston. The stadium isn't exactly around the corner from the other activities. Atlanta was okay, but I didn't realize what level of racism still existed in the city of Atlanta until visiting the Super Bowl there. And I walked into what was supposed to be a jazz club and got kind of a funny look. And, when the person at the door says, "Hey, flower face, what are you doing here?" You get the sense that they don't dig the idea that they can't go where the white people are operating businesses. But
I always thought, just in terms of just not a fun city to be in, and particularly in winter, like Indianapolis had to suck.
Indianapolis was probably it was up there. People was able to stay with some friends and
Good restaurants.
The actual execution of the Super Bowl game itself was a disaster. And of course, they had lousy weather and people had all kinds of struggles getting out of the stadium. Stadium's actually in New Jersey. New York City wasn't particularly accommodating. And of course, the thing that would impact our opinion the most in the case of Lubie and me was no food on Radio Row. Can you imagine? How did they conduct a Radio Row? And
Catering?
Yeah, and actually, it's funny. As much of chazers as the media tends to be in terms of thinking if it isn't catered, it isn't journalism. There actually is a practicality to having something there of substance that you can either drink or eat, because in many cases you're sort of locked into this room for 12 hours at a time.
I'm not going to lie. The last time it was down here, and I met you guys at the convention center for radio.
That was weak, also. Yes.
I was not impressed with that. Now the cafecitos, the Cuban coffee, was excellent. That was on point. But the pastelitos, they were kind of stale and not.
They were very chintzy there. Yes.
And they didn't have a plancha and someone making cubanos. Like how do you not do that? Like, I mean, it doesn't cost anything. There's got to be like 15,000 guys who look like Pitbull running around town who's got one of those things. Like, how do you not have Cuban sandwiches? Like, I was not impressed with the catering the last time.
No, they didn't do a great job there, and it was very restrictive.
I don't remember if that was COVID related or not. Was that during COVID? I can't remember.
That,
I want to say it was
I don't remember. Yeah, it was around that time, maybe a little bit before that, just before the pandemic broke out. It's possible. I don't remember the year exactly because they started to blend together. But I'm with you. I don't recall anything remarkable.
Favorite Super Bowl thing, and it was the Monday I was going down there. Kobe had just died the Sunday before. And who's the radio guy down here who also flies helicopters? Is it Stephen J. Gray?
Stephen J. Gray.
Yeah. Everybody on Radio Row wanted to have Stephen J. freaking Gray on as a guest because he knew something. Because the only person in the building who knew something about helicopters and helicopter crashes. So, like, Stephen J. Gray was the most popular guy on Radio Row for an entire Monday because Kobe and his daughter had just died in a helicopter crash.
Marino's walking through. Nobody's talking to him.
Right. It's Stephen J. Gray's doing like 10 national shows. National producers are like pulling Stephen J. Gray over to do 15 minutes about helicopters.
Yeah, it was crazy. But if I had to say places I would never want to see the Super Bowl contested again, Indianapolis would be number one if I was going to the city, which I did for many, many years. Arizona got a little bit of a pass because at the time I wasn't exactly flush with capital, and I decided to go. I think I was working with you at 1470, and I had just started doing some reports in Radio Purgatory, the Lappa Nation, Steve Lappa. May he rest in
2 hours with Rick Barry, who was like the angriest human being on the planet.
I told you that, and yesterday on our conversation show on Bleacher Brothers, we had Dan Grunfeld, who is the son of Ernie Grunfeld, has his own great story, has a great book out about how the game sort of brought together the family and had them overcome what was an improbable history for somebody that was going to become an NBA executive eventually, and of course a beloved college basketball player and well regarded, even though he wasn't a brilliant pro. Where Ernie Grunfeld, long pro career, and ended up with the Knicks, so super popular there. And he was. And now I lost my train of thought there because I'm thinking we got to get out of the show. But
I wish I had kept the tapes. But that first Super Bowl was like the most remarkable series of. Okay, for those who don't know, at the time, Defo was on a station literally to the right of Radio Haiti, who was literally next door to us on the right. But Leslie Visser had just started working with us. So Defo goes by himself out to Radio Row with his little blue ISDN box, which like literally we had to go to Radio Shack and get parts and find a guy who knew about the just to make it work. But all these people, Hall of Famers in every sport and every, like Defo's got and they all will stay for like 2 hours because Visser is there.
Yeah.
So we have this endless litany of Hall of Famers doing, one of the great Super Bowl Radio Row couple of weeks of all time on a station that nobody listens to, on a station that's got like 6 listeners.
If that.
It was remarkable.
That was pretty amazing. So, and that was sort of my return to Radio Row coverage. I decided to go out there, and of course, I had to book the cheapest hotel that I could find. And there's not much in the way of value buys in terms of rooms anywhere within reasonable vicinity of the site where you're going to be broadcasting from. So I'm out at a Motel 6 on the distant fringes. I mean, halfway to Yuma, and the one saving grace of Phoenix as a city was that I went the wrong way when I got on the highway the first time, and I went one exit in the opposite direction before I realized that I was going the wrong way. And what do I see? A sign that says Turf Paradise, this exit.
There you go.
I ended up finding salvation there in Phoenix. Otherwise, it was a disaster.
You, of all people, should be ready for this because you have gone to derbies.
Yes.
And there is nothing more ridiculous than the prices that like the Super 8 and the Motel 6 get in Louisville for there's some shit box. I want to say it's a Red Roof Inn. The one time I went, that's actually walking.
That's where we were. I know where you're talking.
By walking distance, I mean like 2.5 miles
over the bridge
for Churchill Park, and it's like $700 a night for the whole week during the derby.
Minimum 4-night stay.
Yeah,
So even if you only wanted to be there like 2 days, which of course would be the MO that you would likely follow, you had to get hacked by these guys for 4 nights at 700 a pop, and that meant 3 guys in a room. I remember sleeping on the floor by the door as Jersey Kyle and I crashed some derby party, came back at 4 in the morning, and then I was going on the air with something like at 6, which would have been what? Would that have been 7 o'clock? And I think there's a time zone differential of an hour.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, it was a brutal beat, and was a long way. Walking distance, you have to be in shape.
Walking distance is
You got
a
to
very
walk by the
creative
stadium
term.
there of Louisville Cardinals at the Schnellenberger Park there, or whatever they call it, Papa John's, and
Go for like a quarter mile on the interstate, walking on the side of the road.
yes, you had to hitchhike for a piece of the trip, but you're right. The price gouging was enormous. This place was so remote that it wasn't impacted by that. So I think I was staying at a Super Bowl site. Site being, somewhat, ridiculous of an exaggeration, for $60 a night, roaches included,
There you go.
livestock included. All right, we got to run. Hey, it went by. I mean, we didn't say anything of any significance, but it was a lot of fun, Professor. So we managed
We're
to
not
dodge.
trying to say anything of any significance this week. There's nothing significant. This is the thing to learn,
Yes,
is that this week is just a vacation week. Well, Lubie has it right. We should be in Barcelona.
exactamundo.
Is he going to come back and be the guy who starts saying Barcelona like he's now a native?
I don't know about Lubie doing that.
What's he like plus 220 that Lubie's coming back with a fake Spanish accent?
He's
Or
not
if you're
the
talking
type
like Antonio Banderas.
to pick it up. And with what's going on in politics, I don't know. We'll be able to calm him down. He may be on a dilaudid drip.
Oh, that's true. Like Ice may be after Lubie. When
Yes,
he comes
yes,
back.
because he visited Spain.
Exactly.
All right, Professor, great job. And thank you for getting up. I knew you were probably involved in some late college basketball games. So we'll do it again tomorrow, people. And thanks so much for tuning in. As I mentioned, that Dan Gruden interview was a lot of fun, very informative, especially if you were a New York basketball type. The son of Ernie Grunfeld, but had a basketball career of his own, was a standout at Stanford, going back to like, I want to say 2005, somewhere in there. And, had a nice college basketball career as well, and very informative stuff there. So that's on Bleacher Brothers Conversations with Jeff DeForest. And then next week, we get the ultimate when it comes to football analysis on that program, as Mike Westhoff is going to join us for the hour, and he's always great. Professor, thank you so much. Can't thank you enough, and appreciate you coming on and doing a show with me. And we'll talk again tomorrow. Thanks so much for being with us, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow as we leave you now that.
The time.
It's 9:08.
Oh, a happy day.